T-Wolves bounce back strong and beat the Rockets thanks to Anthony Edwards' monster third quarter. I got the expert, Jack Borman. He's going to help us break it all down, and it's all coming up next on the Locked On Wolves POSTCAST.
You are Locked On Wolves POSTCAST, part of Locked On Minnesota on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up? What's up? Back in the lab, back at it. Another T-Wolves POSTCAST episode right here on the Locked On Sports Minnesota Network. You got myself, Luke Inman, at Luke_Spinman. That's the man, Jack Borman. He's on Twitter at JRBorman13. And Jack, before we get into all the action, quick reminder, tonight's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more with America's #1 sportsbook and official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Right now, new customers, you're getting $200 in bonus bets with any $5 bet. That's $200 when you bet just $5. Check it all out. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOnNBA. All right, man, here's your quick summary here. Wolves only up 4 at halftime, despite some pretty good defense. They just weren't very efficient shooting the ball. Cat with only 2 buckets through 2 quarters. Ant was ice cold in the first half, just 1 of 9 shooting. But then, like we've seen so many times already this year, Finch settles everyone down in the locker room. They come out with a monster third quarter. They outscored Houston 32-20 thanks to an Anthony Edwards masterclass, man. 9 of 10 for 22 points. If my numbers are correct me if I'm wrong, but 32 in total on the night. They run away with it, 111-90. They moved to 35-15 on the year. Kick us off, though, Jack. What's the big takeaways here? And I guess, big picture, how badly did they need this one after the loss to Orlando and knowing full well, hey, this is our last home game now at the Target Center for a couple weeks?
Yeah, I mean, it was a big game first and foremost because it clinched the Timberwolves having Chris Finch or sending Chris Finch and his staff to Indianapolis to coach the Western Conference All-Stars. So he'll be able to coach Carl and Anthony Edwards, which will be really fun for him. I'm sure it's the first time that a Timberwolves coach has manned the sidelines in an All-Star game since 2004 when Flip Saunders did it. That was when the Timberwolves were the #1 seed in the Western Conference at the end of that season. So obviously the game had some pretty big implications internally. I don't think externally people would really put that much stock in a game against the Rockets. I believe they beat the Rockets by like 27 the last time they played. They beat them by, 21 tonight, but it was clearly a much wider gap, in that fourth quarter. But yeah, I think, my biggest thing was just to see Anthony Edwards get back on track in a huge way. He had 32 points on 11 of 22 shooting. Like you said, he had that, absolutely bananas third quarter in which he outscored the Rockets 22-20 by himself. But I think for him, it was just the way in which he did it, right? I think for him to start like 1 of 8, or whatever it was that he started, and then for him to go like 10 of 14 or 10 of 13, whatever it was, to finish the game was incredible, right? And to do it against a pretty good defender in Dylan Brooks was obviously huge. So, that's obviously a really big thing for the Timberwolves moving forward, just to get him back on track, get him in a rhythm now as they embark on a road trip, kind of a weird road trip that's split into 2 separate mini road trips. Because they play in Milwaukee on Thursday and then they don't play again until Monday in Los Angeles. So they'll definitely come home. They just won't play a game at home with 3 days off. So a bit of a weird one there. But and then I just think the other big one was Rudy, and we can get into that here momentarily. But yeah, I think just seeing Anthony Edwards get after it was I think really important, and it was cool because he wasn't necessarily the one that was initiating most of the offense like we've seen while he's been struggling here. I think, getting Mike Conley back and, kind of getting I think Finch did a good job of kind of getting his feet wet when he first got back from that hamstring injury. And now that he's kind of back full go, has played a few games, back at 100% now, they had him really initiate a lot of the offense, which, I think kind of contributed to Ant's slow start a little bit, but was also a big reason why I think he found a rhythm the way he did in that third quarter.
Yeah, Jim Pete said 2 things that kind of stuck out to me in that third quarter. One, Ant was doing that, had so much success against the Rockets, against a lot of different looks. And then the other thing that just kind of stuck out to me was that he said that Ant, basically what Ant was doing on the floor with Kyle Anderson on the court for a part of that third quarter was a big win for Coach Finch and the Wolves. Any idea what he meant by that? And then again, maybe you can go take things another layer and just talk about how Ant had so much success against so many different looks versus the Rockets in that third quarter specifically.
Yeah, I think what Jim meant by that was pretty. I don't want to. It obviously wasn't a shot, but the Timberwolves spacing offensively when Kyle Anderson has been on the floor has been suboptimal. Let's call it.
Sure.
And the defenses have almost completely ignored him. When he doesn't have the ball in his hands, and even when he does have the ball in his hands, they've been playing gap coverage really far off of him, and so for Ant to do what he did in situations where they were playing the gaps against him to try to take away his drive, and he still found creative ways to get to the rim in less than ideal spacing, but also too really found his touch with perimeter jump shooting, right? Made a couple of tough mid-range shots, made a few threes that were huge. I think he was 4 or 5 from beyond the arc, including a really tough sidestep 3 on the right wing to kind of seal the 20+ point quarter. But yeah, it was cool to see Ant then, once they started doubling him, get off the ball and trust that it would come back to him, which is obviously something that he's going to see in the playoffs, especially, depending on, what the Timberwolves team looks like after the trade deadline. There might be another option that they can throw out on the floor that will maybe, let's say, reduce the number of possessions that teams are able to send a double team at him. But just a mature performance from Ant in the way that he dominated. And then once the defense kind of took the ball out of his hands, he didn't try to force anything, which was, exactly what you want to see, and is what doomed the Timberwolves a little bit in that Charlotte game where, obviously a little bit of a different circumstance there with Carl chasing some history, but the team could have fallen into the same problem where they just got Ant the ball, got out of the way, didn't help him, just expected him to do everything. And that certainly wasn't the case tonight.
Who else or what else, for that matter, stuck out to you tonight and want to give maybe a little bit more spotlight to? Naz Reid, 13 points. Cat, only 4 of 12, 14 points tonight. Jaden, only 5 points. I know you mentioned Rudy Gobert, though. Another huge night. 22 points. What was that? I guess Friday night versus the Magic. Follows that up with 17 points, 13 boards, and 4 blocks, man. Talk to us about Rudy Gobert. He's just been great.
Yeah, I think my favorite thing about Rudy Gobert, and what I admire the most about Rudy Gobert as a player, is that he really plays hard on both ends of the floor and raises the floor of the team, even on nights like tonight where Karl Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards were pitiful in the first half. They brought no energy to the game. Any energy they did bring was bad energy. The two of those guys had 13 points on 3 of 16 shooting, I believe, with 3 turnovers in that first half. And the Timberwolves were still up by 4 because they held Houston to something like 36% shooting in that first half. Hold on. What is it? I have the number in front of me. Yeah, 38% from the floor in the first half. And they were 0 of 7 in that little short mid-range area, right? That floater area that Gobert forces guys to take shots from, because the thought of going at him at the rim is tough for guys to reconcile with. And I think being up 4 and playing as badly as they did in that first half offensively, I think surely had to free them up a little bit in the third quarter to just, hey, if we can just raise our energy on the offensive end of the floor, I really think that we're going to be able to kind of run away with this game. And that's exactly what happened. And so I think what Rudy did is probably going to get lost in the Ant third quarter sauce, if you will. But he set all that up and he made all that possible. And even when Ant was going on that run, Houston was still, couldn't do anything offensively. They were, I want to say they were 7 of 27, 26% from the floor, only scored 20 points in that quarter. And Gobert, winning his matchup against Alperen Şengün was key. But, again, tonight, we've talked about this a lot on nights where we've praised Rudy Gobert. The Houston Rockets were 2 of 16 in the 4 to 14 foot range. That is 12.5%. And in, long mid-range looks, which is a more popular shot against teams that have a deep drop coverage, like we see with Rudy Gobert, 2 of 10, 20%. So you put all that together, there are 4 of 26 in the mid-range tonight. It's it's incredible. And two, I think offensively then too, we saw something that I think we might see of more going forward, which was the Wolves really tried to put Alperen Şengün, who's one of the worst defenders, especially at the center position in the NBA, on an island. And they cleared out the corner and they ran a bunch of empty side corner pick and roll with Mike Conley and also with Anthony Edwards initiating too. That's how, we saw Rudy Gobert get that and one right away off a nice pass from Ant. That was an empty side pick and roll where two guys went to Ant. So he hit Rudy in the middle of the lane and just got hacked and made it. But I really like the way the Wolves kind of picked apart the defense, isolated Şengün and tried to make him defend, and he couldn't do it. And again, it also goes back to Conley initiating some more of that offense. And I think the Wolves don't want to, they don't kind of want to overuse the pick and roll, I guess, with Mike and Rudy, just because other guys aren't touching the ball as much in those situations. And I think if you're trying to get guys like Ant and Karl in a rhythm early on in the game, I think it's tough. But hey, if you want to build a cushion early in the game against a team that's got a really poor defensive center that can't defend in space, struggles to defend the pick and roll, especially the roller in the pick and roll, I think that's a great recipe, and we saw that tonight. So I hope that that's something we see moving forward as, some of these regular season games now, the stakes of those games will be raised, especially against teams in the Western Conference and teams in the Northwest Division as well.
Yeah, well said. Points in the paint as well. To your point, Wolves 56, Rockets 38. I don't know where that lies.
Too. 58-41 on the glass too, which was huge.
Unbelievable, man. Huge win. Love to see it. Rudy Gobert ripping it up. Plenty more deep dive from this one, including Coach Finch's film room session yesterday. And that's all coming up right after this. Quick reminder, tonight's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more with America's #1 sportsbook and official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Right now, new customers, you're getting $200 in bonus bets when you place any $5 wager. $200 in bonus bets when you throw down just $5 on any bet. You will not find a better promo than this all year long, and you don't even have to win. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, no better time to get in on all the action. The app, so easy to use, and they got everything you need. Money lines, parlays, prop bets, over-unders, you name it, they got it. FanDuel's got everything you need to bet on the entire NBA season, and it's by far the easiest and simplest betting app to use. Go check it out for yourself. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon today. America's #1 sportsbook. FanDuel, official partner of the NBA. Okay, so Finch said in the presser that they spent yesterday's practice off the court in the film room, grinding the tape, just kind of recalibrating some things, making sure everyone's kind of crystal clear what their responsibilities are, what their assignments are. And it sounded like this was one of those, again, crystal clear messages from everyone on the roster from the top down. Obviously, you saw some good results tonight with the win, but you're my elite NBA mind. I ask these kind of questions too. Knowing what you know about how the Wolves have been playing, what they've been struggling with the most specifically, what do you think, if you just had to guess, what do you think Finch's biggest messages were specifically as far as like the X's and O's go?
Yeah, I think he was probably pretty pointed in talking at Karl-Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards and telling them to please, for the love of God, please stop driving into the gaps. Please stop these one pass or no pass possessions where you're isolating and holding the ball for 4 or 5 seconds. I think that he's probably showing them possessions from the first quarter and saying, where the heck is this in the fourth quarter? Because they're probably running a lot of the same type of actions, in that, they're probably trying to start those guys off the ball, get the ball in their hands, early in the shot clock. But the problem for the Wolves is that, a lot of if you go back and watch, especially against Orlando, so many of their fourth quarter possessions didn't really start until there were 10 or 11 seconds on the shot clock, which is just way too deep into the clock to be starting something. And a lot of times it was just, Nickeil Alexander-Walker dribbling the ball around or Mike Conley dribbling the ball around and getting the ball to Ant, and then Ant just sitting there and waiting until there's 7-8 seconds left in the shot clock and then going. It's just terrible offense. And I think for Finch, he likes everything to be done quick. He doesn't like the ball to stick. He doesn't like players to not move around when they don't have the ball. And so, I think that there was a lot of that going on. Or hey, like let's raise our compete level earlier in the game, so we don't have to have these super tight, tense fourth quarters where the game should have been won in the second or third quarter like it was tonight. So I think there's probably a lot of those things. I think they probably looked at some different ways where they could drive to the baseline more to create more corner threes. I think that the more the Timberwolves are able to generate open 3-point shots, they make a lot of them. So, they've been, I think, first in 3-point percentage since the first of the year, or second behind the Clippers. So, for them to be able to shoot the 3 to 40% clip, you just got to find more ways to generate more of them. And it's, we love to say Karl-Anthony Towns shoot more threes, but there's some other functional ways that you can do it as well. And the more that you can get drivers to the baseline and kick to the opposite corner, get the defense in rotation, swing the ball around, drive against a rotating defense, you're going to be able to create more of those opportunities, right? And so, some of that can come from running more empty corner pick and roll, right? Mike Conley, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Jaden, and all those guys are good at getting the baseline and creating from there. And so we may see more of that going forward. I would presume, especially since I think the more you can involve Rudy Gobert as a scorer, the more pressure, it takes off of your lead dog scorers to go out and get it done. And I think too, just it allows you to play bigger, if that makes sense, impose more of your physicality, your will on the interior of the defense, especially against teams like Houston, where they just don't have much of a presence in the paint defensively, right? And so the more that they can find ways to really dictate that and make the other team adjust rather than the other team being able to throw a haymaker and the Wolves having to adjust, I think the better off they're going to be.
Well said, by the way. Great explanation. And constructive criticism was like the big message when players were asked, and like how it's so important, no matter what the name is on the back of the jersey, to be able to accept responsibility and learn as a team behind the closed doors and not let all those frustrations spill out over onto the court in front of your opponent. Do you think one of the messages might have been about Mike Conley, not just being the glue and the leader of the team, but maybe being more aggressive when it comes to scoring points as well? I only asked because started the game out with a quick three and then a couple nice drives to the lane we just haven't seen a ton of this year. And Jim Pete referenced that. Maybe Coach Finch talked about that yesterday at the practice in the film room. Ends 2 of 6, 8 points, so don't light the world on fire, obviously. But could there be a concerted effort to get bite cooking a little bit more, you think, too?
Yeah, I think honestly some of that comes with running more pick and roll or handoff game with Gobert, right? And that I think you see a lot of Mike Conley's 3-point takes come in wide open catch and shoot situations, but also when he's kind of in that 2-man game with Gobert, whether he's kind of playing hot potato with Gobert, passing it back and forth, switching the side, I guess, that they're doing the handoff on to try to wall off a defender, kind of create that sidestep open 3-pointer. But also you get a situation, right, where Conley runs a pick and roll, Gobert's rolling, he hits him for a lob, and then the defense is so worried about Gobert that they kind of forget to defend against that Conley little, 5-6 foot floater that he likes to get to. And so I think that's some more ways that you can generate some more open Conley looks, because he's not a guy that's just going to go create his own shot. I mean, he can, but that's just not the way he likes to play. And so I think it's more just trying to involve him in more actions or have him initiate, get the ball in his hands a little bit more in scoring situations. Could certainly be part of that. But again, I do think the spacing has a lot to do with it. And again, like you're not helping the spacing if you're driving into gaps and turning the ball over, like a lot of these commenters have been saying. So I think the more that you can generate 3-point shots, have 3-point shooters on the floor, especially with the 2 bigs out there, the better the spacing is going to be. And we've seen Kyle Anderson play less and less over the last couple of weeks. And I don't necessarily think that's a coincidence given the way that he's played. And given that the trade deadline is right around the corner and he could, be a player who gets moved at the deadline because he does have an expiring, $9 million and change contract. And so, obviously I think that the coaching staff and the front office probably had a longer leash with him this season, considering how integral he was to the team last season and how, beloved he is inside that locker room as a trusted veteran. I've been inside that locker room plenty this year. I see how everybody interacts with Kyle Anderson and everybody in there loves Kyle Anderson. And so, it'll just be interesting moving forward, because I do think if they have had more shooting in there, I think that would alleviate a lot of the spacing issues they have, especially when Gobert's on the floor. That pairing was really good last year. It's been really poor this year. And I think the more you can get Anderson in those lineups with Karl Anthony Towns and Naz Reid and have more spacing out on the floor for him to attack, and other guys just to help have a more open lane, I think the better off the Timberwolves are going to be in those slow-mo minutes.
Yeah, and this is kind of all under the same umbrella here, same theme, same realm here. But, we had Tyler on Friday after the Magic game, so you and I didn't get to chat. But I just want to ask super quick, kind of stemming off from what you're talking about already, 30 seconds or less. What frustrated you the most about that loss versus the Magic? Again, offense, defense, coaching. Everybody's talking about the turnovers per usual, right, for this team. Was there a specific guy or two that you thought really let them down? I mean, what had you pulling your hair out the most in a game you should be winning 3, if not 4 out of 5 times at home?
Yeah, it was just Ant, right? He had 4 possessions in a row where he either, or 5 possessions in a row in the fourth quarter where he either turned it over, missed a shot, took it from a 3-point lead or a 2-point lead to a 5-point hole that they just couldn't climb out of. And then when Mike Conley checked in, 4.5 minutes left, they started running a lot better offense, getting more clean looks. Conley initiated more things, and they just couldn't make shots. So I think it's just disappointing from Ant to see him continually try to force it. And again, like I said, they just took him 15 seconds to get into any type of offense that was even remotely reminiscent of them attacking or trying to create something, create a shot, create a pass for a teammate, something like that. So it wasn't pretty. It wasn't pretty being in there. The fans were pretty on edge for that whole fourth quarter.
You were there
coming, but
you were there.
Just a bummer. So but
tough vibe for sure. All right, quick look at the schedule on deck coming up, and that's all coming up right after this. Quick reminder, this episode of Locked On Wolves Postcast, it's brought to you by Quiz. Quiz, it's a next-generation trivia experience. It's also the world's first platform where you can earn money playing knowledge games. And for Locked On Wolves fans, they've created an NBA quiz game where you can test your knowledge and win real cash. Play with friends, play with other fans, and let your knowledge shine all the way to the bank. And you can play without downloading anything. Just go to app.quiz.com and start playing today. NBA Quiz is the ultimate knowledge challenge for fans that live and breathe basketball. And I've already had so much fun playing it. Just go to app.quiz.com and test your knowledge today and win cash in the process. That's Quiz with 3 I's, just like a 3-pointer. Play now, showcase your skills, and take home cash prizes. App.quiz.com, where fans become champions. Give me a quick 60 seconds on this Rockets team, man. Last time we played them, we won, blew them out, but they didn't have Dillon Brooks. That was the big bugaboo. They didn't have Dillon Brooks. Obviously, he's a huge spark for them. I'm looking at their last 3 drafts, each one with a top 5 pick. You've got Thompson this year, the rookie, 4th overall. Jabari Smith from Auburn, 3rd overall last year. Jalen Green, 2nd overall 3 years ago. How's that little core and nucleus coming along this far? Do you think they're close or have the parts if they can just maybe keep developing some of those young guys? Or what's the prognosis on those guys?
Yeah, I just think it's a really weird collection of players, frankly. You have guys that are on different timelines with they had a ton of money in free agency or cap room in free agency this past year. They went out and got Fred VanVleet, Dillon Brooks as some veterans to try to help the young guys along, if you will, and help them play some more competitive basketball. But the problem is that you have guys like Jalen Green and Amen Thompson, who are 2 pretty bad off the ball players, and that those are 2 guys who, if they need to, in order for those guys to impact the game, they have to have the ball in their hands, and it's tough for them to do that, right? And I think for Jabari Smith Jr., they were really hoping for more out of him this season, especially the way that he played the second half of last season. I'm probably the highest on Jabari Smith out of all those guys, but they also drafted a guy this year in the first round, Cam Whitmore, who fell. I can't think off the top of my head why he fell as far as he did, but he was a potential top 5 pick, went in the 20s, and has been awesome for them. I think he's been averaging north of 20 points a game the last handful of games. So they've just got a lot of guys that they're trying to bring along. They don't really have that much of a presence off the bench. And they don't have much interior defense, but their perimeter defense with Dillon Brooks guarding kind of the lead dog scorers and Fred VanVleet playing some pretty decent defense at the point of attack too, with another really good defender off the bench and Jayshawn Tate. They've been one of the, I think, 10 best defenses in the league so far this season, and their offense has just been really hit and miss on certain nights. They scored, in the 130s on some nights, and they've had nights like tonight where I want to say the Timberwolves held them to an offensive rating of like 86, which I believe was the lowest the Timberwolves have held anyone to this season. So just really inconsistent, and that's what's going to happen when you have a lot of guys who offensively are pretty inconsistent. So, and it's tough for Jalen Green.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'm a big NFL draft guy. I'm looking at their last 3 drafts. I only mentioned the top 5 lottery picks. You're right. They got Cam Whitmore, pick 20 this year. They had 3 first-rounders last year. Tari Eason, LSU, pick 17. Ty Washington, Kentucky. And then the year prior, I think they had 4 first-round picks, man. It's funny being such a nerd about the NFL draft and that like every 3rd, 4th, and 5th round pick matter once you get past these top 10, top 12. And I know everybody knows that, but yeah, there's just, I don't even know half these guys. Josh Christopher, Arizona State, pick 24. That was their Mr. Irrelevant, it looks like, in the first round 3 years ago. So yeah, they've had 9 first round picks the last 3 years. And it's just pretty mind-boggling, I guess, that they don't have that young core nucleus yet that you really feel good about if you're a Rockets fan to build around.
Yeah, man, it's tough when you have to change coaches too. And I think that Ime Udoka, he was the coach that took the Celtics to the finals, and then obviously was fired. We all know that story. But he's been a really good coach for them, I think, in terms of trying to cut out a lot of the a lot of the immaturity that's ironically the immaturity that, a lot of these young Rockets players have played with over the last couple of seasons. So obviously a step in the right direction for them this season. And who knows if they'll be able to either continue to develop in these guys into where they want them to be, or, there's been a lot of smoke that they've tried to trade Jalen Green to Brooklyn for Mikal Bridges. And so we'll be interested to see if they are able to successfully bring in more of a win now veteran in exchange for someone like Green, who, really doesn't, I think, fit with the way that Ime Udoka wants their offense to work. So.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, last one real quick here. Here's the schedule coming up now. Home games. We have 3 in a row at home. That's over. That's long gone. Bulls, Bucks, Clippers, 2 with the Blazers, all on the road, 5 in a row. 3 late West Coast games on the tail end of that stretch as well. What's something that sticks out to you the most, or which matchup or game are you just most intrigued or maybe excited about?
Yeah, I obviously think that the Clippers game will be huge, just because I think it's always a good measuring stick to play against that. I'm just most excited to see if Jaden McDaniels can kind of get on a little bit of a defensive heater here. I think, when you go and defend somebody like DeMar DeRozan with the Bulls, who will really test your discipline defensively, and then he'll probably be the guy that checks Damian Lillard when they play Milwaukee. Probably spend some time on Giannis, but I'd imagine Carl and Ant get more of that matchup. And then in LA, he'll get the Kawhi matchup. And then in Portland, he'll get Shadon Sharpe if Sharpe is able to return from an adductor injury that he's been dealing with. So it'll be kind of an interesting runway, 5-game road trip for Jaden to continue to play well. Tonight held Jalen Green to 8 points on 3 of 15 shooting, 0 of 5 from the floor. Did a really good job of making a really explosive player go more east to west instead of north south, getting downhill to the basket. So it's going to be really excited to see Jaden hopefully get some momentum going into the break, and then afterwards, hopefully be able to unleash him a little bit more offensively against some teams that are near the bottom of the league in defense in Milwaukee, Brooklyn, San Antonio, Memphis, and Sacramento, and then the first 5 out of the break all at home. So.
Well done tonight, as always, my man. Wolves bounce back strong after that tough loss Friday night versus the Magic. They hold on, 111-90, hold on to first place in the West. Jeff doing some scoreboard watching for us here. Raptors blew a 16-point lead, lost in double OT to OKC. Brutal. Heat blew a 9-point lead early and lost to the Clippers. Brutal. All right. Well,
that was a really low-scoring game, that Heat Clippers game. I think it was like 40-40 at halftime or something like that I saw, but.
What was, before we get out of here, here's a fun one. Nice and easy, nice and light before we jump out of here. What was more entertaining or intriguing for you? Seeing 50 Cent in the stands? I don't know what 50's doing in the 612, man. That was hilarious. Shout out 50.
And
Or
the 50th game of the season for the Wolves.
yeah, the
tonight.
50th game of the season. What's it mean, man? What's it mean? Or Rudy Gobert with that monster dunk, right? But it sounded like, and they're talking about it in the comments right now, it sounded like Jim Pete said that was his daughter wiping the sweat and everything off the court, trying to get out of the way. That was his own daughter. So
No. That was my guy Mike Greenbaum's daughter. Mike Greenbaum is the excellent statistician for the TV broadcast, who sits right next to Michael. And
I'm glad we could clarify that.
Mike's
clear
daughter.
that up.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Okay.
No, Jim made it clear that was Mike's kid. He didn't mention Mike by name initially, but it was. It was shout out to my man. We've seen some nasty highlights of those.
I know, man.
Court wipers getting wiped out, especially in college games. Thankfully, that hasn't happened as much in the pro games. But yeah, she was moving to get out of the way there.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, great stuff per usual, my man. All right, back on the road Tuesday versus the Bulls. Tip off for that one, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. Rest assured, we'll be back. Every game, same time, same place, right here to break it all down. Huge shout out to everyone that joined us in the postcast. Always love all the feedback, the comments after every game. Quick reminder, you got to go check out all Jack's work on Twitter at JRBorman13. And make sure you check him out and the full crew on the Minnesota Basketball Party. That's each and every Wednesday. Sam Ekstrom, Gophers legend Ron Johnson, Kara Levin's very own Reggie Wilson. And if you haven't already, Ben Beacon, ripping it up over on the Locked On Wolves podcast. That's each and every day as well. That'll do it for us tonight, though. He's Jack Borman. I'm Luke Inman on Twitter at Luke_Spinman. Until next time, signing out.